In Better Never to Have Been, Benatar argues that it is, for all intents and purposes, always a harm to come into existence. And one argument that figures prominently in that book for this conclusion is the asymmetry argument. According to this value asymmetry, the absence of pain or harm is good, even if enjoyed by no one, whereas the absence of pleasure or benefit is not bad unless someone exists who is deprived of this pleasure or benefit. Now, many will doubtless want to immediately reject the asymmetry by saying that while it makes sense to think that the absence of pleasure is not bad in the case in which no one exists, it's absurd to claim that the absence of pain can be good in the case in which no one exists. And so the worry is this: how can anything be good if it's not good for some individual? Benatar's response to this problem essentially is this: that one needn't think of this good as a good for an actual individual. Instead, we can think of it in something like the following sort of way, namely, if some individual had come into existence, pain would be bad for this individual, and the avoidance of it good. And this is what is meant by the absence of pain being good, even in the case in which no one actually comes into existence. So, in other words, it's good because from the point of view of an existing being, the interests of an existing being, the absence of their pain would have been good, even though this would mean they wouldn't have existed at all. Of course, Benatar is quick to acknowledge that it is logically possible, using this reasoning, to make the parallel claim about the absence of pleasure being bad. Because one can say, from the point of view of the interests of an existing being, the absence of their pleasure would have been bad, and therefore the absence of pleasure is bad. But, as Benatar notes, the fact that we can logically make this parallel claim is not the same as this parallel claim being true. It's important to keep in mind that Benatar's argument for the asymmetry is not that one cannot logically make the parallel claim, but rather Benatar is simply responding here to the worry that such claims must be incoherent. So how does Benatar defend the asymmetry? Well, in effect, what Benatar does in the book is argue that this asymmetry best accounts for many of our other common moral judgments, namely other moral asymmetries. So one such asymmetry given in the book is the view that while we have an obligation not to create miserable lives, we don't have a similar obligation to create happy lives. Now, another example Benatar gives is that while we normally do not regret the absence of pleasure on Mars, for instance, we do regard the absence of pain on Mars as welcome. We think there's something good about the absence of bad things on Mars. And Benatar is claiming that the asymmetry is required to account for these views. And so it's an argument that says if one accepts these other moral views, and I think Benatar is correct to say that many people do accept these views, the most plausible way to explain these is by reference to, by means of the asymmetry. And while I don't actually intend to settle the matter here, I do think it's a position for which one can provide a strong defense, and Benatar, I think, does just that.